3 days ago, we started something. We opened with a man sitting in exile in a farmhouse outside Florence, stripped of power, stripped of everything, writing the most dangerous book in human history. And we asked the question he spent his entire life answering: what does this man actually want? If you watched part 1, you already know that the answer is never simple. And it is almost never what the man tells you it is. Where we broke down the 4 currencies that drive men at the deepest level: security, recognition, power, and legacy. We established that a man's real motivation is hidden in 3 places: what he brags about, what he complains about, and what he absolutely refuses to compromise on. We built the 3-phase engagement sequence: reconnaissance before you ever make a move, alignment that positions your offer inside the man's own worldview, and the ask that lands not like a pitch, but like an inevitable conclusion he walked towards himself. And we closed on the most complex scenario of all: the man who does not know his own price. The unexamined man. The man who, if approached with enough patience and precision, does not feel manipulated, but discovered. That was the foundation. Today we finish the manual, because knowing a man's price and approaching him correctly, that is the opening game. What separates the tactician from the master is what happens when the environment stops being cooperative. When the man across from you is not confused, he is testing. When resistance is not a problem to solve, it is a strategy to counter. Today we cover the endgame: pressure without pushing, tension without force, and the single most powerful move available to any man in any negotiation, one that costs nothing to execute and changes everything about how you are perceived. You watched part 1, and you built the foundation. Now we close the building. Let us get into it. We build the full approach into a repeatable sequence. This is the tactical framework, the methodology that transforms everything you have learned into action. Phase 1. The reconnaissance. Before you ever make a move, you gather intelligence. This is not casual conversation. This is deliberate observation with a clear objective. Identify the currency. Map the wound. Understand the worldview. In a business context, this means the meeting before the meeting. The lunch where nothing is officially on the table, but everything is being assessed. You ask open questions. You listen for brags, complaints, and refusals. You watch what he defends and what he dismisses. In a personal context, this is the pattern you track over time. How does he respond to praise? Does he deflect it, or does he lean in? What stories does he return to repeatedly? And repeated stories are not nostalgia. They are unresolved emotional coordinates. They tell you exactly what still matters to him. Reconnaissance is not rushed. A man who moves too fast to the pitch reveals that he values the deal more than the relationship. And the moment a man feels like a target rather than a partner, the approach fails. Phase 2. The alignment. This is where strategic mirroring activates. You have done your reconnaissance. You understand the currency. Now you align. You position yourself, your offer, and your language inside the man's existing framework. The critical skill here is reframing without lying. You are not changing facts. You are choosing which facts to emphasize and how to contextualize them. A skilled lawyer does this in every courtroom. A skilled executive does it in every boardroom. The same truth, presented differently, produces entirely different emotional responses. To consider 2 ways to present the same business proposal to a security man. Version 1. This is a high-growth opportunity with significant upside potential. Version 2. This structure is designed to protect your existing position while creating a stable, predictable revenue stream. Your downside is capped. Your foundation stays intact. Same deal. Entirely different emotional landing. The second version speaks his language. The first version triggers his anxiety. Alignment is not about being all things to all men. It is about being precise. One man, one currency, one frame. Phase 3. The ask. Most men build to the ask like they are diffusing a bomb, slowly, carefully, with visible tension. The ask becomes an event, and events create pressure. Pressure creates resistance. The Machiavellian approach is different. By the time you reach phase 3, the ask should feel like a natural conclusion, not a sales pitch, but an obvious next step that the man himself has been moving towards. This is why phases 1 and 2 are not optional. They are not courtesy. They are construction. You are building a path, and by phase 3, the man is already walking it. Your ask simply names the destination he has already chosen. The ask itself should be direct, confident, and clean. No hedging. No excessive qualification. You state what you want. You state what he receives. And then, remember phase 5. You stop talking. Now we address the most complex scenario. The man who does not know his own price. This is more common than you think. Most men have never been asked the right questions. Most men have never sat quietly long enough to understand what actually drives them. They operate on autopilot, reacting to incentives, drifting towards comfort, mistaking preference for principle. These men are not dishonest. They are unexamined. And an unexamined man is simultaneously the most difficult to move and the most movable, because he has no fixed position to defend. He can be shown his own motivation as if for the first time, and if you do it skillfully, he will feel not manipulated, but discovered. Seen. Understood in a way he has never been understood before. This is where the deepest influence lives. The technique is called reflective revelation, and it works like this. You ask a question, not a leading question, a genuinely open one. What would make this feel right to you? Or, what would have to be true for you to move on this? Then you listen, not for the answer, but for the emotion behind the answer. The words are surface. The feeling underneath is the price. When you identify it, you reflect it back. It sounds like what matters most to you here is that this decision protects what you've already built. Watch what happens. The man does not feel analyzed. He feels heard. And a man who feels heard will walk through walls for you, because in a world full of people waiting to talk, you were the one who actually listened. Before we go any further, I want to hear from you. You have just studied 4 human currencies, the architecture of approach and the art of reflective revelation. Now I am asking you to apply it. Drop a comment below. Tell me, which currency do you operate in? And more importantly, which currency do you see most often in the men around you? The men you do business with, the men you lead, the men you negotiate against? Your answer is not just engagement, it is reconnaissance. The man who knows himself knows his blind spots, and the man who knows his blind spots is nearly impossible to manipulate. Comment now. Let us see what you are made of. You now have the full approach sequence, reconnaissance, alignment, the ask. But there is one final layer, and it is the one that separates the tactician from the master. Because everything we have covered assumes a cooperative environment. It assumes the man across from you is operating in good faith, that his resistance is simply misalignment, and that the right frame will unlock the right response. But what about the man who is not cooperative? The man who is testing you, stalling you, or actively working against you? What about the man who has decided his price is your surrender? Next, we cover the endgame. How to handle resistance without breaking rapport. How to apply pressure without appearing to push. And how to know, with cold, clear precision, when to walk away and make that the most powerful move you have ever made. The final lesson is coming, and it may be the most important one yet. In the winter of 1962, the world stood at the edge of nuclear annihilation. Soviet missiles in Cuba, American warships closing in, two superpowers locked in a standoff that could end civilization in 72 hours. And in the middle of it all, John F. Kennedy did something that every general, every advisor, every hawk in the room told him not to do. He waited. He did not attack. He did not capitulate. He constructed a response so measured, so deliberately calibrated, that Khrushchev, a man who had stared down Stalin himself, blinked first. Kennedy won the Cuban Missile Crisis not with force. He won it with positioning. He made it clear, without ever saying it directly, that the cost of continued aggression outweighed any possible gain. And he created an exit for Khrushchev that preserved enough dignity to make retreat possible. And he held his nerve in the silence between moves, while lesser men were screaming for action. This is the endgame. This is what this part is all about. Because every approach eventually meets resistance. Every alignment eventually encounters a man who will not move. Not because your offer is wrong, but because resistance itself is his strategy. Because testing you is how he decides whether you are worth trusting. Because some men need to see you hold before they will follow. The question is not whether you will face this moment. You will. The question is whether you will be ready for it. Not all resistance is equal. The master negotiator, the man who moves through the world with genuine authority, understands that resistance comes in three distinct forms, and each one demands a different response. Now, resistance type 1, informational. This man is not pushing back on you. He is pushing back on uncertainty. He does not have enough information to feel confident, and his hesitation is not obstruction. It is due diligence. This is the most common form of resistance, and it is the one most often misread as opposition. Salesmen call it objections. Strategists call it intelligence requests in disguise. When a man says, "I need to think about it," he is almost never thinking about what you think he's thinking about. He is searching for the piece of information that would resolve his internal conflict. Your job is to find that piece. Ask him directly, "What would you need to know to feel certain about this?" Then, for the last time, listen. Resistance type 2, positional. This man understands the offer perfectly. He's not confused. He's negotiating. His resistance is a performance, a tactical move designed to test your confidence in your own proposition and extract better terms. Positional resistance is the most theatrical form. It comes with crossed arms, long pauses, expressions of deep skepticism, and statements like, "I just don't know if the numbers work." Here is the critical insight. A man who is truly uninterested doesn't perform. Performance costs energy. Energy is only spent when the outcome matters. Well, when a man performs resistance, he is already half committed. Your response to positional resistance is not concession, it is stillness. You do not lower your price. You do not add incentives. You hold your position with the calm certainty of a man who knows exactly what he is offering and exactly what it is worth. If you move prematurely, you validate the tactic. You teach him that performance produces results. And every future negotiation with this man will open with the same theater. Hold. Let him feel the weight of your confidence. Then, if adjustment is warranted, make one deliberate, framed concession that signals generosity without signaling desperation. Resistance type 3, fundamental. This is the rarest and most important to recognize. This man is not uncertain. He's not performing. He has a genuine, structural conflict with your proposition, a conflict that no amount of reframing, patience, or persuasion will resolve. The fatal mistake here is continuing to push. Every additional attempt to persuade a man with fundamental resistance drives him further away and costs you standing. You become the man who does not listen, the man who does not respect a clear answer. And in doing so, you forfeit not just this deal, but every future possibility with this man and everyone in his orbit. Recognizing fundamental resistance and respecting it is one of the most powerful moves available to you. When you acknowledge it cleanly, you withdraw gracefully, and you leave a door open that most men would have slammed shut out of ego. More on that door in a moment. There is a paradox at the heart of high-level influence. The harder you push, the more resistance you generate. But complete passivity signals weakness and invites exploitation. The resolution to this paradox is not a compromise between pushing and passivity. It is a third option, one that most men never discover because it requires a level of emotional control that is genuinely rare. That third option is strategic tension. Strategic tension is the art of creating urgency, consequence, and forward pressure without ever appearing to force the outcome. It is influence at the environmental level rather than the interpersonal level. Here is how it works in practice. Instead of pushing the man towards yes, you make the cost of not deciding increasingly visible. You do not manufacture false deadlines. False urgency is amateur, and it destroys trust the moment it is detected. Instead, you surface the real consequences of inaction, and you let him sit with them. I want to make sure you have everything you need before I move forward with the other conversation I have scheduled. This is not a threat. It is information. But it creates real tension, because now the man understands that the window is not infinite, that other options exist, and that his delay has a cost he did not previously account for. Simultaneously, you maintain warmth. You remain the man who is for him, the man who wants this to work, who is on his side, who would prefer to close this together rather than move to an alternative. This combination, external tension plus personal warmth, is extraordinarily effective. The man feels both the pressure of the situation and the comfort of your presence. You become the solution to a problem you have partially constructed. This is the art, not manipulation in the crude sense, but a sophisticated management of the environment in which decisions are made. Now we arrive at the principle that most men intellectually understand and emotionally cannot execute. The willingness to walk away is not a last resort. It is a constant posture. So let us be precise about what this means, because it is frequently misunderstood. Walking away is not anger. It is not bluff. It is not a tactical tantrum designed to shock the other man into compliance. Men who walk away dramatically, hoping to be called back, have already lost, because they have revealed that the outcome matters more to them than their position. True willingness to walk away is internal. It is a genuine, a pre-decided clarity about what you will and will not accept, established before you ever enter the room, before emotion is engaged, before ego gets involved. The man who has this clarity negotiates from a completely different position than the man who needs the deal. Every word he speaks carries a different weight. Every silence lands differently, because somewhere beneath the conversation, the other man senses, even if he cannot articulate it, that this man will not be broken, and that sensing changes everything. J.P. Morgan, the most feared financier in American history, was famous for making an offer exactly once. Not because he was inflexible, but because he had done his work so thoroughly. His offer was always precisely calibrated to what the other man needed. If it was rejected, he stood up, nodded, and left. He was called back, almost every time. Because a man who does not need you is infinitely more attractive than a man who does. This principle operates in business, in negotiation, and in every significant relationship a man will navigate. The moment your need for an outcome exceeds your commitment to your own standards, you have transferred power to the other side of the table. And that power is extraordinarily difficult to recover. Decide your floor before you enter the room. Then hold it like your name depends on it. Because it does. Every strategist eventually loses a negotiation. Every approach eventually meets a wall it cannot move. The question is not whether this will happen. It is what you do in that moment, because that moment, handled correctly, can become the foundation of a more valuable future position. Most men, when a deal falls apart, leave with frustration visible on their face. They say too much. They express disappointment, sometimes bitterness. They burn the bridge out of wounded ego. This is one of the most expensive mistakes in the long game of power. Machiavelli observed that a prince who could not win a battle outright should never make an enemy of the man he could not defeat. Instead, he should withdraw in a way that preserved the possibility of future alliance. A man who loses gracefully retains more power than a man who wins badly. When a deal falls apart, you exit with warmth, clarity, and an open invitation. You say, "I understand completely. If anything changes on your end, or if a different structure makes sense in the future, I'd welcome that conversation." No ego, no residue, no closed doors. Because in the long arc of business and relationships, circumstances change. The man who said no in January has a different set of pressures in September. The deal that did not work in this structure may work perfectly in a different one. And the man who left the room with dignity will always get a second conversation. So the man who left with bitterness will not. Your reputation is not what you do when things go well. It is what you do when they do not. Manage your exits with the same precision you manage your approaches, because exits become entrances. Let us bring the full manual together. Every man has a price. It is denominated in one of 4 currencies: security, recognition, power, or legacy. These currencies are revealed in what he brags about, what he complains about, or in what he refuses to compromise. Before you approach, you do reconnaissance. You observe. You ask open questions. You listen for the emotional coordinates beneath the stated positions. When you approach, you mirror his worldview. You align your offer inside his existing framework. You speak his language. You activate his identity, and you build a path that he walks towards naturally, so that your ask feels not like a pitch, but like an obvious conclusion. When you meet resistance, and you diagnose it. Informational resistance calls for clarity. Positional resistance calls for stillness. Fundamental resistance calls for respect and a graceful exit. You apply pressure through strategic tension, not through force, but through the visible reality of consequence and the warmth of genuine partnership. And beneath all of it, you maintain the one posture that makes everything else possible. The genuine, a pre-decided willingness to walk away from anything that falls below your standard. This is not a collection of tricks. It is a philosophy of engagement, a way of moving through the world with enough clarity about human nature that you are never surprised, never desperate, and never outmaneuvered for long. Machiavelli wrote for princes navigating the treacherous politics of Renaissance Italy. The terrain has changed. The human nature has not. The man who understands what others want and can deliver it strategically does not need to compete for position. He is the position. That is the endgame. And now you know how to reach it. What you just consumed is not entertainment. It is a framework that most men spend a lifetime and a considerable amount of money trying to piece together from scattered books, failed negotiations, and hard experience. If this gave you one insight that shifts how you move through the world, like this video, not for the algorithm, as a signal to yourself that you take this seriously. If you know a man who is navigating a difficult negotiation, a stalled business relationship, or a deal he cannot seem to close, share this with him. Because the knowledge that changes your position is worth more than any tactical advantage you could keep to yourself. And if you are committed to moving through the world with more precision, more authority, and a deeper understanding of what actually drives human behavior, subscribe. Every video on this channel is built with the same standard. No filler, no flattery, only strategy. The next briefing is already in production. And if this one was useful, the next one will be essential. Study well. Move precisely. And remember, the man who knows the price always sets the terms.